All right, another thing that I want to hit on today, and this is a really sad and tragic, terrible thing that happened, was the shooting of the Ohio teen. The young girl, 15 years old, was wielding a knife, and she was shot by the cop. And here's some images for you. This was actually show the other image first. This was a really, really tragic incident. And it leads us to the question of, is there another way, right? Is there a better way? So you can see right here, clearly she has a knife. She's got this girl in a pink tracksuit pinned up against a car. At this point, she had yelled an obscenity. She had yelled, I'm going to effing stab you, you biatch, is what she said to this girl. And then the other image, you can see she's got her arm up. And she is really, truly about to go after the girl. Show that other image. So you can, it's kind of far away, but she's got her arm up, right? And she's about to go down on that girl's like neck or chest or something. And so in that split moment, the officer felt like his only option to potentially save the other girl's life in the pink suit was to fire his weapon, to discharge his firearm. And he shot her several times, and that young girl did not make it. Really tragic. We don't know anything with the situation as far as there's a lot of, at this point, various reports of, well, it was the girl with the knife who called 911 saying that she was being attacked. And then others say, no, it was the girl. It was the one in the pink that called 911 saying she was being attacked and her grandmother was being attacked. And then this dude here in the hoodie, not really sure what his involvement was, but when the girl with the knife, who was unfortunately killed, when she attacked another girl, this dude kicked that girl as that girl was on the ground, which was really odd. So I wasn't really sure if he was friends with somehow related to this girl with the knife, or if he was somehow, what the whole beef was between all of them. But all the officer knew is he shows up on the scene, and he doesn't know, nor does he care about who's guilty or who did what to who or who stole whose boyfriend or whatever the reason was that whatever they were fighting about, right? He doesn't know who's doing what to who. All he sees is this young girl raising up her arm with a knife, and she's about to stab that girl. And so he took action. And this obviously is set off, it's an emotional situation. This young girl, 15 years old, she was a great student. She seemed to be a really nice girl, and she lost her life in this situation as she was potentially attempting to take the life of another girl. And, in that situation, the officer he could have ended up with 2 dead girls, right? If she would have stabbed the girl in the pink suit and then he fired his weapon at her, then you could have had 2 dead girls rather than 1 dead girl, which is, but the big question everybody has right now is, was there a way to have no dead girls, right? And this is the conversation that we're having right now with our policing is, at what point is it okay to use deadly force and at what point is it not? Now, in my view of this case, I don't think there was any other way, unfortunately. I do think in this situation, this police officer was justified in using the deadly force. I don't think there was any other way to incapacitate this girl. Besides that, using a taser or something like that, which was my first thought, like, why couldn't he have tased her, until I saw the video and I saw how close this girl was to stabbing the other girl. That's when I realized, I don't think a taser is protocol actually in that moment. I think that the protocol for taser is when somebody is not a direct threat to the officers or to another person. And that is when they try to tase a person. I've seen tasings happen here in LA. I've seen a guy, he was running, he was unarmed. And because he was unarmed, but he was resisting arrest and running away from the cops, they tased him. I saw another situation where there was a woman with a knife on the boardwalk in Venice Beach, and she was wielding her knife around, but she wasn't directly, she was kind of lunging at people and stuff, but not close enough to where, she hadn't pinned anybody down and was really going to get them. But she was kind of threatening people. And so people called 911. The cops It took them a couple of hours, but they surrounded this one. They cleared out the area. They surrounded this woman. It took like 20 to 30 cops. They called in the SWAT team, helicopters swarming around above. And they were aiming all their like beanbag rifles at this woman. And she was, they were working on disarming this woman. And it looked like the entire police force was out there trying to disarm this woman with a knife. But the difference was she wasn't directly about to get somebody. She wasn't directly about to endanger another person. And that girl on that car in the pink suit had no escape. She was pinned up against that car with no escape. So this made me wonder about the UK, because in the UK, we know that, or at least it's been told to us many times, that they have other ways of disarming people, that, why can't we do it the way the UK does? And what is the protocol there? And so what can the US do to learn from the UK? So I looked it up, and it turns out that in a situation like this, they would have probably shot her. It turns out that it is a misnomer that in the UK, the police officers don't have guns. That is something that now yes, they did disarm their cops, and they made it to where the vast majority of the police officers in the UK do not have firearms. Okay. But then what they have are these patrols, particularly trained cops that do have weapons, and they're actually they call these cops, where is it here? They armed response vehicles, ARVs. So these are the people that show up if it's a domestic violence situation, or if it's somebody that, like with this 911 call, for example, with this Ohio teen, the 911 call was, she's got a knife. So in the UK, the armed response vehicle would have shown up to that. So any sort of violence, the armed response vehicle shows up. And that is the patrol that shows up. Now, for a while, and they're armed, and they are trained in the UK to shoot to incapacitate. So they don't have any rules there to shoot to kill. What they say, which I don't know if we really have that rule necessarily here either. But in the UK, their handbook, the official policy is not shoot to kill, it's shoot to incapacitate. But because they're trained to aim at the chest, they understand that by incapacitating that person, it is likely going to kill them because of where they're aiming. And they are, even in the UK, trained to aim at the chest. They're not trained to aim at the leg or at the arm or, something to kind of hurt the person or debilitate them. They're trained to actually shoot at their chest, knowing that that will kill them, likely kill them. So it turns out that, they had fewer of these response vehicles. They had fewer armed officers. They only had these armed response vehicles. Now they actually have more of their police officers armed, because after 2010, they found that there was a police officer who died from a knife attack. There were also 44 other cops, it says, that were buried, 44 officers that were killed. And the chairman of the Police Memorial Trust said that, quote, it was almost certain that at least 38 of those police officers would be alive had they been armed. So they tried this experiment of not arming their cops, and then they slowly have started rearming them, because it was putting the officers' lives at risk. They were dying. And so they have... So I would say what they're doing is better than what we're doing, right? So they have these armed response vehicles. They have specific cops that show up, but they, and they also have other rules. They say that, look, if you as a police officer shoot and kill somebody, or however you kill them, you are held responsible just like anybody else. They don't have any special protections for their cops like we do. So, like, for example, in Minnesota, they have a clause where an officer is allowed to use deadly force in XYZ situations, right? Well, in the UK, they don't have that. So each one is reviewed the same exact way it would be reviewed if you or I killed somebody in self-defense. They would look at the situation and they would decide if it's self-defense, but they're not given any sort of special protections. They're not given some special ombudsman sort of review board that looks it over and then says, okay, you have administrative leave and now you're off the hook. They do it no different than they do if it was a civilian who shot somebody or killed somebody in self-defense. And that, I think, is what we need here, right? I think it's obvious that in this country, we need to hold the cops more accountable, meaning they don't get some special review board that's chummy with the police departments. They would have to go to trial every single time they kill somebody. And that in this country is about 900 to 1,000 times a year. So they would have to go now 96% of the time. It would be very clear to a jury or to the judge, whoever's making the decision, that that it was an imminent threat, that there was imminent danger, and the cop had no choice. But we should be calling for every single instance, and not just when it's a black person who's shot and killed or harmed or injured or but it's got to be all people, because this issue is a pervasive police problem that affects all, not just one or two groups. It's something that needs to be discussed all across the board, and so and dealt with all across the board. So, I just wanted to kind of discuss that. I thought it was really interesting that when I researched the UK and how they handled these situations, thinking that what they would do is disarm. Now, they can disarm just like they do here in the United States. Like I mentioned here, in the LAPD disarmed this woman with a knife as they surrounded her. They had 20, 30 cops. They were slowly moving in on her until they were finally able to disarm her. In the UK, they would do the same thing. If they have somebody kind of crazy running around with a knife, but that person's not a direct threat at that very moment to somebody's life, they would get, wearing kind of riot gear, and they would slowly move in on that, surround the person, and then slowly move in on him, and slowly move in on him, and slowly move in on him until they sort of suffocate the person with the police all around, until they could then disarm that person and take them in. But you would need to have a team of people right there on the scene. You would need to have, that person couldn't be a direct threat to somebody else in that very moment, and that is something that we could learn. And some of our police departments are trained in that way, like LAPD is trained to do that. But maybe these smaller towns, these smaller budget areas where they don't have LAPD or, NYPD type cops that are, that's like their lifelong goal is to go and be an officer in those cities, and whatever. I mean, not every town has that ability. And unfortunately, all of our police departments are subject to the municipalities and the municipalities' rules. So interesting stuff going on with that. But it is very tragic. We don't know the situation. It doesn't matter what the situation was, like why the girls were fighting, what was going on. I mean, none of that is really relevant. It's when the girl decided to really go after that girl with that knife, that could definitely kill a person. And I have a friend, I mentioned him on this show before. He served time in prison for murder. He got into a knife fight very similar to this, did not intend to kill the person. He just got really mad, and he ended up stabbing a guy, and then realized what he had done when he came out of that rage and realized that he had stabbed a guy. But it did kill that guy. It was a young guy in his early 20s. He was killed, and my friend served time in prison for that. So rage, in the heat of the moment, you get mad. It's a scary thing.